What's up guys, it's Boondocks, and today I want to talk about Revenant, the newest Warframe to be released. Now this is mostly going to just be like my initial impressions and what he kind of does. Now I am going to talk a bit about where I see him fitting, but not get too much into it, and I'm not really going to compare him to other frames, but I will throw a couple out. Now, real quick, he is a combo frame. So other combo frames in the game are things like Saren and that type of situation, and to be honest, he's a lot of fun. And his abilities are all pretty interesting because he is a combo frame, they all synergize together. So his first one, Enthrall. Now, this ability is really good crowd control. Basically, you're going to enthrall an enemy, and now they're going to fight for you and your team. They will attack your enemies, and your enemies will attack them. So because of that, they are really good at grabbing aggro off of you. Unfortunately, your teammates can kill them. Therefore, you're going to have to constantly keep your thrall count up as your teammates are killing them in order to keep the aggro off you. Now, one interesting thing is when an enthralled enemy dies, they're going to leave behind a little pillar of death, and any other enemy that walks through it, they're going to take a decent chunk of damage. Unfortunately, you can't really force enemies to walk through those pillars, and therefore it's kind of just a added bonus that's not ridiculously good. His second ability, Mesmer Skin, is good on paper, but in practice it's a little bit rough, at least in my opinion. The reason being, it has a ridiculously slow cast time, and it stops you dead in your tracks. With that being said, it is pretty interesting because the way it works, once it's on you, you're going to have a set number of stacks which you can increase with ability strength, and those stacks, which start at 6, and I can get it up to about 12 without having to dip too much into my other ability stats, will mean that the next hits you take are redirected at your enemy instead of you taking them. On top of that, those enemies are then stunned for a set amount of time, obviously based off of your duration. Any enemy that is stunned can then have Enthrall cast on them for no energy cost, which is a nice little bonus, but Enthrall being your first ability means it's going to be super cheap once you get a bit of efficiency on there. His third ability, Reve, is one of my favorites though. Basically, you're going to dash for a decent amount of range, even with just having no ability range on it. As you can see, even my final build has no extra ability range, and it's still pretty cool. Basically, you're going to dash forward in whatever direction your camera's facing, similar to how Hydroid's dash works, or Rhino's, where you can't redirect the movement, but you can cancel out of it early. So what that means is if you start dashing and you're heading past the enemies or over an edge, you can reactivate it to cancel out. Any enemies that you pass through, you're actually going to leech off health and shields. If the enemies are enthralled, you're going to gain even more. Now, unfortunately, enthralling enemies and then using Reve on them can be a little bit tricky, because once you enthrall them, they're going to run off and try to fight other enemies, and it's hard to chase them down and then Reve. It's better to just Reve through packs that aren't enthralled if your enthralled characters aren't directly in front of you. One nice thing about Reve though, you can use it with your fourth ability, Dance Macabre. And Dance Macabre is what makes Revenant fun in my opinion. This ability is pretty damn ridiculous. It does a shit ton of damage when you're standing on top of an enemy, and on top of that, its status chance is crazy. Now, the status is pretty interesting as well, because it's going to either do corrosive or magnetic based off of whatever enemy you're fighting. So if you're going up against Corpus with their ridiculous shields, you're going to do magnetic procs, stripping those shields right away, and then bursting them down the way Corpus get bursted down. Now, if you're going up against heavily armored targets like Grenier the Corrupted, you're going to do corrosive procs. Those corrosive procs will stack up pretty high, increasing your total damage. I have seen it where you've gotten 100% armor strip in a couple fights, but in general, you're going to kill them before you strip all their armor. Now, this ability, if you hold down your fire button, you're going to get this boosted damage per second, which is double whatever your base damage is. On top of that, you're also going to increase the status chance. Now, this whole radius and boosted radius thing, I don't 100% understand how it works, because if you see, it's only 0.1 and 0.2 meters, but you're going to be hitting enemies ridiculously far away. I think what this involves is when you're going to be doing your max damage. So any enemies that are 0.1 meter away from you are going to be taking the full brunt of your force, and the full status chance, where further enemies are going to have less. And you'll see this later when I actually use it to fight. Now, it is a ridiculously expensive ability. 12.5 energy per second, and that's non-boosted. Once you boost it, you're going to get even more energy drain, and you'll run out ridiculously fast. But this value is pretty drastically affected with your efficiency and duration. Do not neglect duration. You need it. If you go anywhere below like 50% duration, you're going to be hosed when it comes to your energy drain, and you're only going to reduce it by maybe 1 per second. But as you can see, with even decent energy efficiency and duration, you get it to 6.83. Now, if I swap to my other build, the one that I actually prefer, and check out my energy drain, it's down to 3.23 per second. Now, again, this will also affect your enthralled enemies. Any enemies that get killed while affected by enthrall will leave behind energy pillars that you can then pick up to increase your total shields. It's going to be an overcharge, similar to a what was it? I can't remember the name of the mod. The one for Trinity that gives you the energy vampire, the overshields. Anyway, it's just an extra added bonus as long as you kill your enthralled enemies with Dance Macabre. Now, the one issue, and I'll probably harp on it again later, is the fact that the only ability you can use while using Dance Macabre is Reve, but there's a cool combination. If you look at my current build that I'm testing out, and again, this is purely test, this is my initial impression, because Dance Macabre is so much fun, but you're going to be running out of energy and you're open to attack while using it, I am playing around with this idea of staying in Dance Macabre as much as possible, getting on top of the enemies to get as much damage as possible, and as I'm taking damage, restoring all my energy thanks to Rage. I'm not using Hunter's Adrenaline because it costs a little bit more, and I've only got one Forma, so I'm already capped out. Obviously, I'd want to use some more Forma and then also be able to use my Exilus Adapter, but this is my current setup. With that being said, the gameplay loop is as follows. I use Dance Macabre, get on top of the enemies. As I take damage, they restore my energy, and then I keep dashing through them with Reve to heal myself. Unfortunately, most of your tank stats on Revenant are in your shields, and that's a little bit of a hindrance. But let's kind of show off real quick how Dance Macabre actually works. So, as usual, I'm going to be spawning a bunch of level 155 Corrupt Heavy Gunners. And this is always a good way of showing how the damage and his damage absorption works. So, real quick, I'm going to make sure my Mesmer Skin's up, and then I'll activate Dance Macabre. As you can see, I'm already hitting enemies ridiculously far away. But, as I use Reve to get in close, and directly on top of them, they start getting stunned thanks to my Mesmer Skin, and then I'm going to just dash through them every so often as I'm taking damage to keep my shields up. And as those status procs go off, I start just raking up ridiculous amounts of damage, thanks to stripping their armor, and then they die pretty damn fast. Now, this wasn't the best example because I didn't get to show off my rage all that much, but it definitely works. I've used it on longer missions. It's a little bit difficult here just because of how spread out the enemies can get, and it's very easy to fall off the edge. Now, real fast, I just want to show how Enthrall gets played out, since it's weird. Basically, you just cast it on the enemies, and now they won't attack you, and they run around like idiots half the time. Now, let me just kill one, so that way we can take a look at how the energy pillar gets left behind. Boom, right like that. It's not all that great. That other guy just kind of walked through it and took a quick proc of damage, and that's it. Anyways, let's move on. So what are my final thoughts when it comes to the Revenant? Well, he's a lot of fun, especially the get in your face playstyle that I just kind of showed off. Though, in all honesty, his tank stats are not the best, and I'll show that in a second. But other than being able to dash in and kill enemies using your Dance Macabre, there's not that much that he does that other frames can't do better. While Thrall is an amazing crowd control ability, it does have a cap, and because your teammates can kill them, you kind of lose some of that survivability, because once they die, well then there's nothing there to take the aggro off you. And again, his tank stats are amazing. Couple that with the fact that your Mesmer armor, once you cast it, or Mesmer Skin rather, once you cast it, you can't reapply. So hopefully you can fall out of combat and recast it before you take fatal damage. So let's take a quick look at his stats. His armor is 105. Not horrible. Now, this is actually a point where you can use Steel Fiber, since it's over 100, to gain a decent benefit, and therefore be able to make more use of the Rage or Hunter's Adrenaline to fuel your energy. Now, his energy is actually pretty decent, especially if you can get a Prime Flow. It bumps it up pretty damn high. His health is sadly low. I really wish instead of having this high shield capacity, they gave him more health, so that way you could fuel the build that I was just running. Unfortunately, he's primarily shields, and personally, I dislike shields in this game. I like being able to health gate. It's a lot stronger, especially in late game, to be able to health gate. But if you do decide to use a redirection, his shield capacity is pretty ridiculous. And his sprint speed is average at best. So he's all around a very middling frame. He's more focused towards casting and not tankiness, but in order to get the most of his damage, you have to be in the thick of things. So I really do wish they had higher tank stats and that they weren't on shield. Unfortunately, that's how it goes. Other than that, the one major thing that would push him over the edge is if you could cast Enthrall while using Dance Macabre. Unfortunately, right now, obviously the only ability you can use is Reve to have that cool dashing effect. But since you can't Enthrall, you can't gain the benefits of your empowered Reve or killing the enemies to get the overshield from Dance Macabre, which would make sense since he has such a high shield capacity to be able to get a ridiculous overshield by casting Enthrall while using Dance Macabre. It's a little bit backwards, and I really hope that they just make it so that you can Enthrall. I would be okay with tripling even the cast speed, or not tripling cast speed, tripling the cost of using Enthrall, or 10 times the cost, whatever. If you could just use Enthrall while using Dance Macabre, he'd be really powerful and fun. Unfortunately, right now, I think there's just frames that do it better. If you want more control, you can straight up stun lock enemies with Banshee or Frost or Nyx, slow them with Nova. I mean, there's so much better crowd control than Enthrall, especially since your teammates can kill them to strip it away. His tankiness, as I've already harped on more than enough, isn't that great, including Mesmer Skin not being all that beneficial. Finally, as far as damage is concerned, obviously there's Warframes that are going to pump out more. I mean, just look at Saren right now, she's broken. Excalibur with Chromatic Blade, or even Mesa to some extent. Though Mesa does drop off a little bit quicker, in my opinion, than being able to get in the thick of things with Revenant. Unfortunately, Revenant's tankiness compared to Mesa is oddly in Mesa's favor, considering she has Shatter Shield, which is ridiculous when compared to Mesmer Skin. So, in my opinion, you can't really take Revenant right now into super high level areas. Obviously you can, he's just not going to be as good as Warframes. Of course, these are my first impressions, and after playing with them a little bit more, I'll probably find a better build. But as it stands, I'm most likely going to play a lot more other characters. One thing's for certain though, he's not going to be forgotten like Korra, because no one plays Korra. I mean, really. With that being said, if you get the chance, definitely pick him up. You have to get the mask from Quill Anko, wear the mask to do a bunch of bounties, especially at night. And yeah, I haven't done the quest chain, obviously. I just got him with Platinum, and I don't regret it. He is fun. He looks alright. I wish his helmet was a little bit different. It looks a lot like Loki to me, and that kind of throws me off. I know it's kind of going for the Eidolon look, but I wish it went for something a little bit less top hatty, if that makes sense. No matter what hat you take or what helm you take, they both remind me a little too much of Loki, and that's kind of got an Excalibur end point to it. But I do like the energy flows through him and all that cool stuff. I do want to change this blue. I think it's a little much. That being said, if you get the chance to farm him up or pick him up for plat, he's definitely worth it. He is a lot of fun, especially when you get full teams of Revenant, just kind of all doing your spin to win. It's a lot of fun to just kind of watch. And it really comes down to the status effect of his ability, Dance Macabre, that makes him as good at killing as he is, because he does have that armor strip. But until they make it so that you can enthrall while Dance Macabre's up, I feel like he's lacking. Hopefully they'll change that, and that'll be a huge power boost. And like I said, I don't even care if there's a big negative side effect when doing so, because it'll give him so much more staying power. Anyways guys, hopefully this was interesting. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, good luck, have fun, and peace.